Coronavirus is the only thing people are talking about right now. That's hardly surprising. It's having such a huge impact on billions of people all around the world. But believe it or not, other stuff has been happening too. But it's so easy to miss it because coronavirus has taken over the news. So in these videos, we're going to bring you a roundup of all the biggest news stories that have nothing to do with coronavirus, starting with this. A forest fire broke out right near the Chernobyl nuclear power station, where the worst ever nuclear disaster happened in 1986. The fires happened within the exclusion zone itself, which is still in place around the reactors. Reports said that radiation levels were noticeably higher than normal, but emergency services said everything's under control. While we've all been in lockdown, there's actually been a couple of big earthquakes, including this one in Croatia. In Zagreb, the capital city, buildings were damaged and cars were crushed, causing a lot of devastation. Unfortunately, a 15-year-old boy died and a few others were injured.
Potres je bio jačine 5,5 po Richteru. Ovo je najjači potres u Zagrebu u zadnjih 140 godina.
This is Brenton Tarrant. He's been on trial for committing the worst massacre in New Zealand's modern history at a mosque in the city of Christchurch last year. And the other day, he finally pleaded guilty.
Yes, guilty.
After being accused of shooting and killing 51 worshippers while live streaming the whole thing. These men are trying to stop people from destroying a polling station. The African country of Guinea has just had a referendum and they voted to change the constitution. But critics say the move could allow the president to rule for more than 12 years. Since October, at least 30 people have been killed in protests against the proposed changes. Ever since the 1st of April, Harry and Meghan have officially stopped being senior members of the royal family, meaning they will no longer carry out duties on behalf of the Queen. Amid all the controversy, there's been speculation recently that the Duke and Duchess might end up moving to Los Angeles in California. But President Trump has weighed in on Twitter, saying the US will not pay for their security protection. They must pay. Unfortunately, the coronavirus pandemic has not put a stop to the war in Yemen. At the end of March, the Saudi-led coalition carried out airstrikes against the Houthi rebel group in the capital, Sana'a. Witnesses said that dozens of horses were killed at a military school. Other sites that were hit include the presidential palace compound and an airbase. The war has been raging since 2015 and about 100,000 people have died. This is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. It's one of the most incredible things in the natural world, covering more than 1,400 miles of ocean. But scientists say it's been damaged yet again. They worry that rising sea temperatures has caused what they call a mass bleaching event, which destroys huge patches of coral. And unfortunately, it's the third time this has happened since 2016. Also in Australia, Cardinal Pell has been freed from prison after his conviction for child sex abuse was overturned by the country's highest court. Aged 78, he used to be the Vatican's treasurer and was the most senior Catholic figure to ever be jailed over child abuse allegations. But ever since he was charged, he's always maintained he was innocent. Right now, healthcare might seem like a world of doom and gloom. But in case you missed it, there's also been some really positive news. Scientists in the UK have come up with a simple blood test that can check for more than 50 types of cancer. It often detects it before you start showing any signs or symptoms, when the cancer is usually easier to treat. It's a little way off yet. The scientists are still doing research and there could be limitations to it. But apparently the initial results are really encouraging. There's been rising tension between the United States and Venezuela for ages, but now the United States is offering a $15 million reward for information leading to the arrest of the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, and they've accused him of narco-terrorism.
Maduro and his other defendants have betrayed the Venezuelan people and corrupted Venezuela's institutions. While the Venezuelan people suffer, this cabal lines their pockets with drug money and the proceeds of their corruption. And this has to come to an end.
But Russia is standing up for the Venezuelan leader, saying the charges against him are absurd, and economic sanctions against Venezuela could become a tool of genocide. In Afghanistan, gunmen and suicide bombers killed at least 25 Sikh worshippers, including women and children. ISIS have now claimed responsibility for the attack, which happened in the country's capital, Kabul. And reports say it lasted hours because the terrorists held hostages while Afghan special forces desperately tried to end the siege. In Africa, the terrorist group Boko Haram have ambushed and killed nearly 100 soldiers from Chad. Armies from countries including Chad, Nigeria and Niger have been fighting Boko Haram for years. Around 30,000 people have been killed since 2009, and around 2 million more people have had to flee from their homes. These seals don't have enough ice. On the shores of the Baltic Sea in Estonia and Latvia, hundreds of grey seal pups are dying as the region faces its first winter for decades without any ice. Having plenty of ice helps the seals to socially distance themselves from predators like wolves or foxes in order to breed their pups. But this year they're being forced into places they wouldn't normally go, causing overcrowding and a disruption to breeding season. In America, the state of Arkansas was struck by a tornado. One eyewitness caught this footage on camera in the town of Jonesboro. Local media said it wrecked buildings and flipped cars. Back in 2018, the UK was rocked by a big political scandal called the Windrush scandal. Basically, it turned out that a lot of people who had legally come to live here, particularly from the Caribbean, later on ended up being wrongly deported out of the UK, and other people had been denied their rights. Now, just the other week, while all the coronavirus stuff was kicking off, the government finally published its review into what actually happened. And it admitted there was ignorance and thoughtlessness about race, and there's now going to be compensation for the victims. And finally, while we're all stuck indoors on coronavirus lockdown, these goats managed to escape and spend ages exploring the streets of Llandudno in North Wales. After running riot around the town, police were eventually called in to put an end to the party and move the goats into quarantine. So there you go, there's just a dozen or so stories from around the world which have nothing to do with coronavirus. If you've got any other ideas for stories that aren't being covered elsewhere that we should be talking about, let us know in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to Channel 4 News and stay home and stay safe.